So yeah, so basically what we did in session one, particularly for the benefit of those of you guys that weren't here last week or didn't attend the session, what we did was the intro to just an intro to large language models, which are things like either Google Bard or ChatGPT, as you guys have probably already know, like at least briefly heard about, and just sort of the capabilities of them and what they are. So, and basically just an intro to what AI was, like what are the capabilities of it, and so on, and what generative artificial intelligence was. So yeah, there was a lot of different things we went through, sort of talking about sort of ChatGPT versus Bard. Again, I can't go through the extent of everything that we covered last week, but hopefully gives you sort of an idea and what the capabilities of the software was. So just comparing those two and so on. So yeah, if you'd like, you can go back and have a look through that recording just to make sure you're caught up with it. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure if anyone that was here last week had any particular questions about the content last week or anything, or any particular queries. Feel free to sort of either drop one in the chat or I know, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask. That's not an issue either. Yeah, I can see some more people joining in. I can see we've got Farida, Sabrina, Kieran, Jeff, Andrew all coming in, which is great. For those of you that have joined recently, I've mentioned this just at the start while people were coming in. Please just make sure to check in, as we will be sort of providing a certificate just to say that you've sort of completed the course. So we just need a record of you sort of attending the sessions. So if you haven't already done so, please make sure to check in by either scanning a QR code. I believe Faz has already posted a link in the chat. If he hasn't done so, I'd just ask him to drop a link in the chat if the QR code isn't working for anyone. But please do check in if that's okay, if that's possible, just so we know that you've attended. I will be waiting maybe another 2, 3 minutes until, so just to give everyone the opportunity to sort of join in. But we will get started with today's lesson shortly. In the meantime, just make sure you check in. Okay, right. I think we'll just do maybe like a quick little icebreaker before we get started, actually. I can see we've got a lot of people in. Does anyone want to say where they're dialing in from? I know we've got people from all over the world. Some people are in America, maybe Canada. Some people are in the UK like I am. Anyone want to say where they're dialing in from today? So yeah. So Christian said Newcastle. Is D? I'm not sure. Is that D as an estate or is that D for like Denmark or something? I got Swanson from Philadelphia. Yeah, great. Aaron from Houston. Yeah. Gail from Chicago. Nancy from Houston. Shani from London. Oh, D for Delaware. Yeah. Mountain View, California. I'm assuming, Farida. Yeah, Sabrina from California. Jeff from Phoenix. Tony from Richmond. Mitchell from Chicago. Yeah, getting loads of it. And then Faz is also from East London as well. Best place in the world, apparently, according to him. Not sure if I agree if I agree with that, but yeah. Yeah. Got loads of yeah, from all over the world. So you got Glasgow, Camden, New Jersey. Suresh from New Jersey as well. Yeah. So it is just hit 5 o'clock for me. So what I will do is get started. I mean, we've got 50 people in here, so that's great. Um, for anyone that sort of just joined recently, I've sort of mentioned this quite a few times already. Um, if you haven't already done so, please scan our QR code just to check in, as we are offering a certificate at the end of the course just to signify that you've completed it. So make sure if you attended the session or if one of you is watching the recording back, please scan the QR code on the screen and fill out the form to check into the session. Alternatively, there is a link in the chat, which I think Faz will provide if there's any issues with the QR code. So please make sure you provide that provide well, fill out the form and provide your sort of details so we can actually uh, give you a certificate for completing the course. Okay, brilliant. So what I will do is I think we'll get actually started with the content for today. So today, what the main idea is we're going to be crafting effective prompts for LLMs or large language models. So just a quick recap from last week, especially for the benefit of those of you that maybe weren't here. We'll sort of talk about what AI is and generative AI is. So AI, as sort of a term that gets thrown around quite frequently at the moment, is basically a something that is can be classified as almost like a robot assistant in some aspects. Sometimes it can be something that can be looking at when machines read data or understand data. It's in fact a lot of things. You often hear it get combined with things like machine learning or deep learning and things like that. But effectively, all it is just basically when machines sort of learn sort of human intelligence like features. And what generative AI is, so things like ChatGPT or Google Bard, as we sort of mentioned last week, is when we use these sort of AI machine learning algorithms to sort of generate new content based off prompts that you sort of ask them. And the exact prompts that we're going to be asking them is what we're going to go into detail today, in fact. So you probably already know examples of sort of AI in your regular lives. So if any of you use Siri or Alexa, these of course use AI to sort of understand our commands. So if you were to tell Siri to or Alexa to let's say you wanted Alexa to turn your lights on, you'd say Alexa, turn on my lights, and it would just from speaking, it would utilize those AI algorithms to end up turning your lights on. Likewise, any social media content, if those of you browsing social media, so whatever that may be, whether that's well Twitter or X at the moment, or whether you're trying to watch a YouTube video, you may all these companies have different AI algorithms in the background that sort of recommend content to you, and it helps keep you sort of engaged with content that you might be interested in watching. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about today is actually writing prompts into ChatGPT. So hopefully, if everyone knows what ChatGPT is, and we've sort of seen it, seen it, and sort of interacted with it. But don't worry if you haven't. This is what this course is all about. We sort of briefly touched upon it last week, and we sort of asked it some prompts last week. But we'll get into exactly what we can be asking it today. So sort of the general layout is we've got sort of a text box at the bottom, and we can ask it whatever we want. And it can spit out a load of different information. Sometimes it's good information, sometimes it's not so good. And the same applies for something called Google Bard as well, which is something very similar to ChatGPT, which is as follows. And it follows the same concept. So you've got sort of a text box at the bottom where you can add a prompt. And from this prompt, you can sort of ask it to generate whatever. So, for example, if you wanted to go on holiday, you could suggest me some destinations for vacation or something. So suggest me some vacation destinations, and it will give you some ideas. Now, of course, the more sort of brief you are with it, the more general it is. But we can sort of engineer these prompts to make it as sort of specific as we want and make sure the information that it gives us is more impressive. So that is what the idea of today's session will be. So we'll be writing prompts for ChatGPT that are in fact, well, as detailed as possible and make sure we can refine them to get the best answer out of it. So I know I've gone probably quite quickly. Has anyone got any sort of immediate questions so far? Feel free to either sort of drop them in the chat, of course. Faz is in the chat uh yeah, if you've got any questions. Yeah. So Mary, so where do you find ChatGPT? Just Google. In fact, I will get Faz to paste a link in the chat directly to ChatGPT. You will need to create an account and sign up. I'll also let him do the same for Google Bard as well, which is another similar tool. Feel free to use either tool today. I would recommend one of those two. And you will, of course, need to sign up to these websites and just create an account. For the moment, they are free. ChatGPT does have like a paid subscription model, but it's not necessary for sort of this course. But you may wish to sort of purchase it. I'm not going to encourage anyone to go purchase it. You could sort of make an informed decision on that yourselves. But yeah, please, but make sure at least today, if you haven't already done so, please go to the link that Faz has pasted in the chat and create an account and log into ChatGPT, as it'll be quite useful for what we've got today. Okay, has anyone got any other questions? Anything they want me to sort of clarify initially? Feel free to either unmute yourself or, you can do a Zoom reaction and post your hand up or something. Oh, I will take that as a no for now. Okay. Oh, no, we've got another call. Both are, yeah, okay. Sonson, I think both are blocked on your work computer. That's not to worry. Try and follow along. Maybe if you want, you can sort of maybe follow the recording along at home, and then maybe have a go home and try and go through these LLMs just at home, let's say. Okay, so we're going to get into actually prompt engineering today then. So there are sort of 5 main steps that we want to get into, as you can see sort of highlighted here. These are first context, task, instruction, clarify, and refine. And these are the techniques we'll sort of go into detail today. And this is the process we're going to follow to try and generate the most meaningful responses we can out of either ChatGPT or Bard. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. There we go. Yeah. So first thing sort of identified out of the 5 things was context. So when we want to when we want to ask ChatGPT a question, it's always important to provide it with some context. So the context obviously helps it to sort of understand what kind of question you're wanting to sort of be answered. And some examples of this might be some of these as following. So we've got some examples. So the first one might be you want to provide ChatGPT with the instruction that it's an experienced content writer with high levels of expertise and authority within the tech industry. And then it says you have exceptional vocabulary and you're able to explain complex things to beginners with ease. And what this will mean is it will give you outputs particularly related to the tech industry, as it will be classified as let's say, a experienced writer. So if I was to try this out myself, if I was to, let's say, copy this prompt and paste it into ChatGPT with a new chat, I pasted it in myself. So it's acknowledged this and it says, "Thank you for the compliment. I'm here to help you with any questions or topics you have related to the tech industry." And it will then ask me, what tech-related topics would you like to explore or discuss today? So has anyone got any ideas for what tech-related topics we could ask it to answer for us? Yeah, okay. Mitchell suggested electric vehicles. Okay, brilliant. So maybe for electric vehicles, maybe we'll say, what might be the best electric vehicle to drive? Spell it for vehicle to drive. And we can provide it with that prompt. And it's given me some answers based off this. So it's opted to suggest Tesla Model 3, the Chevy Bolt EV, the Nissan Leaf, Porsche Taycan, and Ford Mustang Mach-E. So yeah, it's given me some options, and it's also given me some pros and cons for each one. And that's sort of influenced by the initial prompt that we gave to it, or initial context that we gave to it. So I'd like you guys to sort of either use some of these prompts or take take some inspiration from the prompts as you can see on your screen to sort of do the same yourself for either ChatGPT or Google Bard. And potentially, if you'd like, share some of your answers in the chat, or again, feel free to unmute yourselves and share your answers to the group as well. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to do this. Again, if anyone has any immediate questions, feel free to feel free to ask. Otherwise, pop them in the chat as well. So yeah, Pete's asked a question where he's asking, how much of a difference would spelling and bad spelling impact the answer from ChatGPT? In fact, not as much as you think. If you sort of have the general idea of the word, let's say just a few letters are out of place, it will still manage to sort of get the idea from what you're saying. So let's say, I don't know, you try to spell achieve and you got the I and the E mixed up, which is quite easy to do. It will still understand that, let's say, you're trying to write the word achieve and it will still take it as achieve, but the in well, in its actual answer. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think Michelle's asked the question about Microsoft Copilot. I think Faz has asked about that, answered that in the chat as well. Yeah, so Paul asking a question about the EV car response based on the availability of the country the person is in. Well, not necessarily, but it's more of a general, it will be more of a general thing. But that's sort of the beauty of ChatGPT, as we sort of get into later. If in the context you want to provide it with the information of what country you're in. So let's say I go back to my original response. Oh, let's go back. So it's giving me these. Let's say I am in the, let's say, well, I'm in the UK, let's say. So if I provide it with the information that I'm in the UK, let's say I'm not sure if this is true or not, but let's say the Tesla Model 3 is not available. 3 is not available. Could you suggest another one, let's say? Could you suggest another car? And if so, it will give me another set of another list that has cars that might be available in the UK. Sometimes it doesn't get the information 100% correct, but the more information you do provide it, the more accurate answer it will be. Okay, I'm trying to go through some more questions. Yeah, so Jessica, you tried to teach a prompt. It spit back some sample lessons, but it didn't ask for any details related to the subject or topic. Yeah, I mean, with your responses, it won't necessarily provide you with details straight away. You sort of need to provide the details yourself. So, like with the sort of EV car example I've given, it's sort of the same thing, where you might need to provide it with details of what country you're in, and that from that it will be able to make more informed decisions of what it could say to you. So yeah, Alina, yeah. So you've heard that you can ask ChatGPT to write a course to sell. So you're in the photography business, which is great, and you're sort of playing with ideas to sell courses for photographers. Um, yeah, potentially. I wouldn't. It can definitely provide you with ideas. A general consensus for when I'm saying to use ChatGPT, I wouldn't advise you to sort of use it to generate everything. But seeing as you're sort of an expert in the field or an expert in the field, you can use it to sort of guide you into what you might want to write for the course. So it will the information it might provide might not be 100% accurate. So that's where your sort of expertise it comes in in collaboration with ChatGPT, let's say, to sort of put the sort of course together. Um, any other questions? Yeah, I think Tony's put another question, but I think Faz has sort of answered that. Okay. Does anyone else have any further questions, or does anyone want maybe a little bit more time to go through some of these prompts, or are we sort of happy to move on to the next stage? I think Georgie's got just one more question. So some guidance onto how to interpret context length and tokens. For example, how should I determine what context fits within the context window and whether that's too long in terms of word count? Um, it's kind of difficult to say. Normally with ChatGPT, try and keep the prompts like to maybe a few paragraphs. Otherwise it will say, yeah, it takes it too long. I would advise keeping it under 500 words at a maximum. But I think if you pay for the sort of upgraded version or the GPT Plus, the prompts you can provide are quite much longer than the free version. So if you're using the free version, I would recommend keeping it under 200 words to 300 words. If you're paying for the Plus, you can make the prompts even longer. Okay, brilliant. I think what we'll do is we'll sort of move on. Um, as I think everyone sort of had a play around with sort of prompting and trying to try either one of these prompts or some of their own, so which is great. So yeah, as we've sort of touched upon, you can sort of make ChatGPT act as different professionals. So for example, if you want it to speak to you as a sort of different professional, as a specific expert in a certain industry, let's say, so like an astronaut or a translator, for example, you can do so. So you can just provide it with that information in the context, and it will provide you with that information in that way. So yeah, so if you want some ideas on how to sort of how to sort of get good prompts with ChatGPT, there is I will just provide this link in the chat for everyone, where this website will just give you some ideas on how to sort of if you're sort of experienced with maybe GitHub, let's say, you can have a look and see um how to start with prompts. But I won't if you can have a read through this in your own time if you would like. Okay. Oh, I clicked on it again. Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to the next stage now, which is providing the correct task, which we've sort of already been doing a little bit for the last sections where we sort of provided a context, like I sort of did with the electric vehicle example. So we provided the context, then gave it a task after. So it's quite important to first provide a context, then give it a clear task, because of course, if you want it to do something, you need to make sure the instructions you're giving it are quite clear. ChatGPT is only going to give you a good enough response depending on how good you've actually asked the question. So some examples of good questions that you might find here is let's say the second example here. So your task is to plan practical lessons for your class that include a variety of different methods, techniques, and teaching styles. So you may be a teacher for a class of, let's say, 30, and you may want to generate a lesson plan. And you may give it this task in the middle to provide you with sort of the structure of your lesson. And then from that, you can provide additional prompts as well. This is sort of in conjunction with, I guess, the first part. So probably won't spend too long with this. I'll just move on to the next thing, which is combining it with the sort of instruction. And you want to combine this ideally with your task as well. So once you've got your task, you want to provide the instructions with some sort of additional information. The example that we've got here is let's say you want to write a paragraph. You may want it to be, let's say, 500 words long, and you may provide it with the instruction. So the task might be to write a paragraph outlining, let's say, electric vehicles, and make sure the output is no longer than 500 words. And this hopefully makes sure that ChatGPT understands sort of what your expectations are, and what you want as the actual outputs in the end. Okay, so we will provide some additional prompts here. So use some of these maybe, or create your own ones and try and add some context, give it a task, and then provide some of these tips, further prompts, which will be, something like keeping the response to be written for someone aged 8 or younger to help them understand better. So make sure you do not use complex words or phrases or sentences, and that in fact provides you with more information, or ChatGPT with more information of what the output will actually be. Okay. So I'm going to stop here for a little bit and let everyone sort of maybe go back to either ChatGPT or Google Bard and and sort of experiment a little bit more with what we've done. So going through context, instructions, and the task in hand. Again, I'll stop here. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to sort of either unmute yourself or drop them in the chat once again. Um, yeah, but I'll give everyone just a couple minutes or so just to have a go with further prompting. I think, yeah, Paul's mentioned that they've got really good responses using Microsoft Copilot, which uses ChatGPT 4. Yeah, I think within Windows 11 now, Microsoft Copilot is built in, isn't it? So that's quite if you have Windows 11, it might be a good idea to try that out if that's possible. Yeah, Jeff is using Copilot, in fact. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, worth it's another resource you can use aside from ChatGPT and Google Bard if you are interested. Okay, Henry's got a question about what are the implications surrounding human creativity now that AI generated content is readily available for use? But that's a very difficult question. I would say, I mean, there's a lot of things that AI can do, and there's a lot of things that AI can't do. So you may have, I'm not sure how much you're reading or how much you know about this, but there's a lot of things, especially with, let's say, image generation, that AI typically gets wrong. So you may have seen sort of AI trying to generate like hands and feet, and often AI with AI art and like the AI generated images often have like 6 or 7 fingers, which is like completely unrealistic and something that it gets completely wrong. So it's not always 100% correct, but it's and in fact the art it generates, while it can be quite good at the moment in its current stage, isn't necessarily at the same level that let's say a human could reproduce, let's say through Photoshop or whatever it may be. Um, I think at the moment, my opinion is that well, AI is sort of a tool that can sort of work as a base for starting something. So, for example, if you've got really monotonous tasks, especially with creativity, or let's say you're writing an article and you're struggling with writer's block, you would use AI to sort of suggest some options, and then from those options, you would pick the best one. So it's not necessarily something that overrules human creativity, but something that sort of assists it. But different different people will have different sort of opinions on what the implications are on human creativity. So it's you can in fact read quite a lot of articles or studies on what these could be, and it's quite an interesting area to research if you do want. Okay. So is it Snehal is asking how do you get Copilot? So Copilot, if you have Windows 11, I believe it is built into the operating system. So in the actual search bar, you can use Copilot search built in with Windows 11. If you do not have Windows 11, or you're on like a Mac, let's say, um, I mean, there are other options. We can use sort of the same capabilities as as Copilot in ChatGPT Plus, which uses GPT-4, which is the similar model. But yeah, and yeah, Jeff's actually pasted a link in the chat which from where you can get Microsoft Copilot from Microsoft support. So have a look in that. It might be easier. Yeah, Tris, if you have Windows 10, I don't believe Windows 10 has Copilot at the moment. So you would either need to upgrade to Windows 11 or, like I've mentioned, upgrade to the ChatGPT Plus subscription, and you can get the same capabilities through ChatGPT 4. Okay, any further questions? Okay, no? Okay, brilliant. Okay, So the final two things we're sort of going to go for very quickly is making sure we go through clarification and also just so clarification first of all. So there's another step apart from context, task, and instructions. So sometimes you want GPT to sort of maybe clarify whether it actually understands your tasks, and you can in fact get it to prompt you back what its understanding of your task is. So if you were to provide it with instructions as follows. So for example, we've got some instructions where it says you're an experienced content creator with high levels of expertise and authority within the general tech industry. Your job is to write content that will be published online on websites, social media, email, newsletters, and in advertisements. Your writing style is friendly, conversational, using informal grammar and non-standard English, as if you're talking to a friend. So while incorporating rhetorical questions, storytelling, metaphors, and analogies. So it says, I will provide you with a topic or series of topics that you will come up with in engaging and educational copy for this topic. And then you give it a prompt saying, do you understand? And it gives you what its interpretation of your prompt actually is. So it's a good way of making sure that ChatGPT does actually understand what you're telling it to do and making sure that this sort of paragraph that it feeds back to you is related to the prompt you've actually provided. And in fact, this is sort of joins with sort of the refinement stage. So the final thing is refinement. So if you're not actually happy with whatever its response is here, you could actually re-prompt it to sort of maybe either generate it again or give it some more information to, let's say, fix any inconsistencies that it has, or ask it to fact check itself as needed. So, okay, example here is in fact, so we've asked it a question where it says how many letters is in the word inaccurate, and it's ended up saying it says that the word inaccurate has 9 letters, when if you actually count it, inaccurate in fact has 10 letters. So you ask it to check itself and verify that inaccurate does in fact have 9 letters, and it says I apologize for any confusion. The word inaccurate actually has 10 letters, so it's ended up correcting itself. And yeah, and then so it does correct itself, but then you can ask it to double check, and it says, is 10 definitely correct this time? And yes, it verifies, yeah, inaccurate has 10 letters, but then you sort of ask it again sometimes, and it ends up thinking that inaccurate ends up having 11 letters for whatever reason, which can be sort of a danger of using these AI tools. So be careful when using these, and make sure whenever you do use these AI tools, make sure you do verify some of the information that it does spit out, and verify it with a trusted source, because sometimes it can get things wrong. But using the sort of refinement strategy does help mitigate this issue as best as possible. So just the final thing, we sort of want to sort of put this all together and make a actual well-defined prompt by using the 5 strategies we've sort of briefly talked about, which is context, task, introduction, clarify, and refine. And this is sort of an experience, sort of like a ideal prompt, as we would say. So the first thing we do is we provide the context in sort of here. So as I've highlighted in blue, you can see the initial context might be you're an experienced content writer with high levels of expertise and so on. So the task is then, as I will highlight in green, is to sort of write content that will be published in online on websites, social media, and emails, newsletters, and so on. And then you want to provide it some instructions, which may be the style is informative, friendly, engaging, and so forth, incorporating humor, real life examples. Then you want it to sort of clarify this, which will be sort of making sure it's 100 words long, written in snappy and punchy style, and then refine it with, let's say, conversational grammar and so forth, and then making sure you prompt it to check whether it understands what you're actually saying it. So this might be a structure that you opt to follow. Okay, so in fact, I think we are sort of nearly entering the end of the session, so I will sort of stop here as we sort of clarified everything. So I'll just open the floor to any questions, if anyone has any, and I will sort of clarify them as best as possible. So, as Chandran, who said, "What's the best use case of Copilot for software development, deploying and monitoring?" So, at, it's again sort of a very open-ended question and very
Hey there,
difficult to say.
Ashley. How are you?
Hey, is that Georgie? Have you got a question? Oh no. Okay. Oh no. Okay. Yeah. So Chandra, just with regards to your question, it's a very open-ended question. In my opinion, the best use case of, let's say, Copilot or GitHub Copilot or whatever LLM like ChatGPT or Google Bard is just looking up documentation very quickly. So if you're, let's say, an experienced software developer, often you may find, especially let's say 5, 10 years ago, you'd often find yourself checking lots of different documentation for lots of different programming libraries, let's say. But with, let's say, ChatGPT or Bard, you can just say, "Oh, what does this function do in the pandas library in Python?" And it will just give you the answer to that immediately instead of you having to cycle through lots of documentation and trying to find out the correct answer. So, in my opinion, that's probably the best use case that I sort of found from personal experience. It just saves you a lot of time just in the initial development stage. Okay. Yeah, Trish, I think sharing the recording later. All the recordings for all of the 10 lessons will be available on the Perks at Work website, as Fazza sort of mentioned. Yeah. Okay. So, great session. So, what's the best way to have it provide sources for the data to make sure that the facts are right? Okay, this is a very good question, in fact. So I will clear some of my annotations. So Bard is very good at often providing sources. ChatGPT, the free version, unfortunately doesn't provide any sources, but the ChatGPT Plus, in fact, has a connection with Bing, which you can prompt it to make sure it sort of has sources to back up what it's saying. So I'll use the Bard example, but the concept is very similar for the ChatGPT Plus example. So let's say with Bard, and can someone just give me a very sort of prompt, let's say, just any prompt that you want to sort of want it to answer. Anyone got any ideas for prompts that we could provide for Bard? So okay, yeah. Tony said, "What's for dinner?" Let's say. Okay, so let's say, "What's for dinner?" So let's provide it with that. Let's see. Not the most concrete prompt, but it will provide something. So it's actually, in fact, asked me for some. It's actually, in fact, said it's not enough information. So what kind of food are you into? Um, so it says, "Do you want something light, healthy?" So on, so on. Let's maybe prompt it with something else. Anyone have any suggestions? Yeah, so Ramon said, yeah, low carb recipe, preferably with red meat. So let's suggest that. So yeah, so it's given me a sort of low carb recipe, and it's probably that. In fact, with Google Bard, it has an option here, right here at the bottom. So it says double check response, and if you click on it, it will in fact just search with Google straight away, and it will evaluate the statements that it's provided. And it says check complete, and it says understand the results. It says Google search found the content that is likely different from the statement, or it didn't find relevant content. So because it's sort of a recipe, it's probably not the easiest thing to verify. But yeah, I think I saw a prompt earlier, yeah, which is what's the population of Massachusetts. So maybe let's say I provide it with this prompt, and it says the population of Massachusetts on this is then. But let's say I prompt it, but can you back these up with sources, and hopefully it should give me back some sources where it provides me with the resource. Yeah, so it's provided me with some links. So some links to census data from the US government, I believe. And yeah, it provides me with these, which says indeed the population is about 7 million as of July 1st, 2023, which is what it said. So it's provided me with sources. So yeah, so it's quite, in fact, it's quite a good tool for
Hello,
lear-
James.
learning how to pack things up. Okay. Okay. Any further questions? I'm not sure if I've missed any because there have been quite a few. Um, if I have missed your question, please just feel free to type it out again or, unmute yourself. Okay. So just okay, if there's any further questions, please feel free to sort of drop them in as needed. Yeah, but we will just sort of highlight a few things just at the end, just to round off. So then, yeah, so obviously, just the general idea from this lesson is basically to get the best response from ChatGPT or any other LLM like Google Bard, is make sure you provide it with enough
I have
information.
an idea about it, but I'm not really up to date in terms of the.
Sorry, George, is that a question or just accidentally unmuted yourself? Okay. Yeah, I'll just continue. Yeah, so just the main idea is just make sure you provide it with adequate information, just so that the response that it does provide back to you can be as concrete as possible. The more information you provide to it, the better the response will be at the end. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple of things I sort of want to note down just before we sort of wrap up. Um, First thing is we have a Coding with Codex community, in fact. Here we will sort of post updates. I think me and Paz will be here. So if you have any questions, in fact, maybe after the lesson or throughout the week, you can in fact post these in here. I'll get Faz to post the link in the chat, but this is on the Coding with Codex website. And if you want, you can sign up with your own account. It is not this website. I have got the wrong community. Yeah, it is the generative AI community here. So if you go to the community tab and go to activity feed, you can find the generative AI group. Okay, my page is deciding to refresh. Yeah, so you can find the generative AI community group. Faz will post, or I will post, lots of different updates throughout the week based off what we've done in each session. You'll feel free to sort of post the questions or anything you have in mind on the community. Yeah, Mitchell, you've got a question.
Certainly.
Oh,
Well, there is a.
Oh, yeah,
yeah, I
no,
have
go
a
ahead.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In regards to just kind of self-discovery here on playing on these different platforms, aside from the awesome ChatGPT prompts link that you provided, are you aware of any resources out there that are almost like workbooks or workflows that you could obviously add some of your own input into it, but like you can do that with like certain Excel workbooks to better master your skills? Is there anything that you're aware of that you could like walk through like a play-by-play that could help us fine-tune these skills?
What specifically with Excel or in fact, I think
Not
yeah,
specifically with Excel, but just within uh, fine-tuning your prompt creation, other than self-discovery.
at the moment, I think because it's so new, it's quite difficult. There aren't that many resources out there, I'd say. I think self-discovery is probably the easiest way to go about it, at least from my experience. In fact, you can learn a lot from self-discovery and understanding what the capabilities of each tool is, what it's good at, what misinformation sometimes it might provide. From what I know, um, not really. Maybe Faz has something that he might know, which if he does, I'll get him to pop it in the chat. But from personal knowledge, no, I don't. Yeah. So like I was mentioning, yeah, we've got the generative AI community. Um, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask on there. And alternatively, you can also get in touch with our email. hello@codingwithcodex. If you want to drop us an email, if there's any issues with either like attending sessions or finding the recordings or any other general questions with regard to this course, feel free to drop an email on there or or drop a question on the community.